Every life is made up of chapters. Some are filled with laughter, some with milestones, some with the quiet, ordinary moments that become precious only in hindsight. And then there are the chapters we never expected, the chapters that arrive without warning, that divide life into a before and an after, the chapters that challenge everything we thought we knew about love, loss, family, and ourselves. And yet, in the darkest chapters, the story continues. Pages keep turning. Love endures. Memories remain. Meaning can still be found. And sometimes, from the most heartbreaking of circumstances, comes a determination to ensure that others do not have to walk the same path alone. This is a story about love, loss, resilience, and purpose. This is a story about what happens when a family chooses to keep turning the page. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands from which this conversation is taking place. Today, I am recording from Awabakal country, and our guests join me from the traditional homelands of the Navajo Nation. Though separated by oceans and continents, both these lands hold stories that stretch back thousands of years. They are places shaped by deep connection to family, culture, and community care. We pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge the enduring wisdom, resilience, and knowledge of First Nations peoples across the world.
Live as long as you can. I just wished that I could have helped the person that I love most. Just because somebody's gone doesn't mean that they're not going to be with you.
I think he'd be really proud of us.
We're sick and damn tired of people dying when they don't need to.
There are some stories that begin with a loss, and then there are stories that begin with a life. Today, we're talking about Riley, a son, a brother, a young man who was deeply loved. Because when someone dies by suicide, the conversation often becomes about how they died, the headlines, the statistics, the questions left behind. But before any of that, there was a person with dreams and struggles, strengths and imperfections, a person whose absence would leave a space so large that those who loved him will spend a lifetime learning how to live around it. For Riley's father Doug and his sister McKenna, that absence changed everything. In the aftermath of unimaginable grief, they found themselves walking a path that no family ever wants to travel. A path filled with heartbreak, unanswered questions, and the difficult task of finding a way forward when the future you imagine no longer exists. But somewhere along that journey, they made a decision that Riley's story would matter, that the conversation so many people are afraid to have needed to be had, and that if sharing their family's experience could help even one person feel less alone, then something meaningful could grow from the darkest chapter of their lives. Together, they created This Is My Chapter, a movement dedicated to connection, conversation, and suicide prevention. Today, they join me to talk about Riley, about grief, about love, about the weight carried by those left behind, and about why telling our stories might just save a life. This is a difficult conversation, but also an important one, because behind every statistic is a person, and behind every person is a story worth telling. Welcome, Doug and McKenna.
Thank you so much for having us. We're so excited.
Thank you so much. It's such a joy to be on your podcast.
For my listeners, and I don't know which order this will come out, I have done an interview with Doug and McKenna, and then they have generously agreed to come and share their story with us, which is amazing. So let's give people an idea of what's going on here. For people who haven't come across This Is My Chapter before, what is it and why did you guys create it?
So, This Is My Chapter is a podcast that we together decided to do. We are a father and daughter who lost my brother and his son last year to suicide. And after his death, we really wanted to find a way that we could make a difference and help others. And as we were brainstorming and just going through our grief, trying to find a way that we could help others not feel the way that we felt, we landed on a podcast. And that's how This Is My Chapter started and became what it is.
Yeah, and this is my chapter in his memory is we decided that our goal on this chapter is to tell our guests chapters of their life. Maybe they've had some bad chapters and they've turned them good, or that our whole goal here is to help people be better people, and our whole goal is to keep people alive.
Before we go into it more, let's talk about Riley. Who was he? What kind of person was he? And what was he like for you, McKenna, as a brother, and for you, Doug, as a son?
For me, he was just the best. And I feel like that's such a blanket statement to say, but it really is true. He was my best friend. He is my sibling that is closest in age to me, but we did still have a 7-year age gap. And my whole life, he was such a big brother in every way, in the teasing me, making fun of me, just, it makes you stronger with me messing with you kind of attitude. But he was also someone who would have done anything to protect me. Anything we did, anywhere we went, he was always looking out for me, making sure that I was okay. And he was definitely the type of person to put the needs of others before himself. And it really showed in how he cared for me. And I would have done the same for him. We really were, especially in the last, I would say, year and a half before he passed, we got closer than we'd ever been. And he really was my best friend.
Yeah, Riley is the youngest of my 3 boys. I have 2 daughters, 3 boys, and then I also have 5 stepchildren. So between me and my wife, we have 10 children. Riley was the funniest. Riley's the hardest worker. Riley could fix anything, could rebuild a house. A lot of his career was building houses, redoing houses, but he could fix any kind of vehicle. Anything he looked at, he could re-engineer it and fix it, figure out how it works. One day my wife said, "Hey, I really want a new kitchen. I want my living room smaller, my kitchen bigger." A few days later, I come home and the walls were up and we repeated the kitchen. That's just how he was. I'd come home from work and he'd be under my car changing my oil because he knew that it had gone over how far it should have been. He was always there for everybody, and he always worried about everybody else. And as I look at it now, I wish I could have realized that, but maybe realized that he needed some help himself. But we tried the best we could once we figured out that he was having some problems.
How did your world change in those hours and days after losing him?
Maybe I'll start with that. I got a phone call from McKenna, and she was just bawling and said, "Dad." And right then I realized I knew who it was and I knew why, or what happened. And she lives about 15 minutes from me. So I said, "I'll be right there." And I hung up the phone and yelled to my wife that I needed to get over there because Riley was gone. And when I got over there, I just hugged McKenna, and I don't remember much more of that night, but I was completely devastated because I always thought that Riley was the one that was going to take care of me when I was old because he was so reliable and such a great person. I couldn't cope for the first week or so. People at work were very, very kind, but a lot of them either would say something that was really weird that I thought, why would they say that? but the other group were people that would give me a hug and not say anything, or the ones that didn't say anything come to me a month later or something and say, I just never knew what to say. I actually love that because when people die, I don't know what to say to them other than I'm sorry, just say I'm sorry and go on. But, people would say, because we were very open about when he died that we put in his obituary that he took his life, because we believe as a family that people need to speak up about this, because if we don't and we keep it hidden and secret, then it's going to keep going. And our goal is to keep people alive, like I said earlier, and throughout the world. And luckily, we're talking to you in Australia, and you're talking to us in the United States about the same kind of thing.
I think for me, it was quite a bit different than I would say it was for the rest of my family. And I think just because people grieve in different ways, not that it was wrong or they were wrong or anything like that. It just, we all had our own unique experiences. And immediately after that night, I was sitting there with my oldest brother, my boyfriend, and his dad. And I looked at them, and it was middle of the winter. And here, every day that I have a day off, I'm skiing. And I looked at them and I said, would it be wrong if I skied tomorrow? And I did not do that. But it took me a long time to kind of process why that was my first thought. And it was because I wanted a sense of normalcy. I didn't want to face that this is what happened and that this was real life. And I was just trying to find a way that I could continue on and not have to face it. And that wasn't the case. I didn't go skiing. I luckily had amazing support around me, but for so long after, I was so worried about taking care of other people, and there was so much guilt that surrounded losing him. Um, I think in the days following, just how I processed, it was hard to leave the house, not only because of grief and being sad, but I felt guilty of how should I feel? Am I allowed to go do these things? Are people going to think that I don't care if I do? Or so much of just, I had never had, I guess that was my first real experience with death. Like when my grandma died, I was really young, and so I was there, but this was the first time, and it was just, I didn't even know how to process it or what to do.
And I have lost my parents, my mom, my dad, my stepdad, aunts, uncles, stuff like that. And I've always been told that losing a child would be the hardest thing in the world, and it is. And we've got to stop the suicides. We've got to stop it. And this is why every week we get on and we talk about hard things. And it's not just suicide, it's about postpartum depression, and it's about multiple personality disorders. We have so many topics that we talk about, and hopefully that people can see something in those episodes, and maybe if it's not them, it's somebody in their family, and they can say, look at this, there's hope for you. But just those first few weeks and the first few months, I would be driving down the road and I'd see a guy on the roof fixing a roof, and I would be thinking, is Riley working there today? Then I realized, he's not there. Or I would try to text him, and I can't text him because he's not going to call me back, or he's not going to text me back because he doesn't have that phone anymore and he's not here.
Something that both of us, I don't want to say complained, but let's say what it was, complained about was when we would be at work, Riley would text us and he would say, "What's up?" And we would say, "We're working." Like, "Are you okay? What do you need?" And he'd say, "Oh, nothing." And he would call, and then he would call again and again, and just, "How's your day?" And it was so funny because we both have set schedules. He knew when we'd be home. And I went back to work really quick. I didn't have another option. I couldn't take time off. And when I went back to work and realized I wasn't getting those texts, that was another thing that It was really hard.
Yeah.
I did an episode recently with my friend Rachel, who has lost 3 of her children, none by suicide, but all very tragic, different circumstances at different times throughout her life. And we talked about the side swipes that happen. Like she says that the stages of grief that people tell you about are bollocks, and that they don't happen the way that psychologists would tell you. She talks about the side swipes and the things that catch you out that you don't expect. And I think those feelings, McKenna, that you talk about can I go skiing tomorrow? I think they're more normal than maybe you think, because when you don't know how to process something, your brain doesn't, like, it's hanging on to the things that feel normal and safe. So, but I'm wondering about those side swipes. You're talking about that you missed the messages, and that wasn't something that you were expecting, because you were so open about Riley dying by suicide. How did people go having that conversation with you in those days and weeks following? And were they side swipes for you when people brought it up?
For me, I really didn't have a lot of people bring it up. I went back to work and no one said a word to me. And so that wasn't something I really had to face, I guess, in that way.
Do you wish they had have brought it up?
That's such a hard question to answer. I think ultimately yes. And not because, oh, I wanted them to check on me or anything like that, but I, from day one, have been open about it. And I think that it is a very scary topic. And if there was a way I could normalize it, I would. Not it itself, but just having conversations about the hard things. And so if anyone would have brought it up and it just allowed me to just be like, yeah, you know, this is what happened. And I ultimately, like, I did talk to several people, and it's not like I go into detail or anything like that, but they know that he did take his life. And that just, for me, wasn't, I guess, the hardest thing. It was the day I went back to work. So it was 2 days after we had lost Riley. I was in my office at work and someone came in and I had these little pictures that a kid had drawn in it, just some random kid, and he had been coloring on sticky notes while I was helping his parents and put them on the wall. And I thought it was really cute and I left him there. You know, if he ever comes back and is like, oh, wow, my art's up. Like, to me, it was a special thing. And a guy came in and made a joke about suicide and how those pictures look like it depicted that. And I broke down and I was just bawling. And yeah, like, those kind of things really catch you off guard sometimes. And it was really soon after. I think now I would be able to handle it a little bit better, but it's still hard.
I can really relate to that, where people make jokes about suicide, as someone who has had a non-fatal suicide attempt, but also being locked up. You know that you're mental, you need to be locked up. Comments like that really get me. Not because I was in a psychiatric institution or not because I attempted suicide, because I really understand how people feel when they get to those places. And I understand how amazing people are who are in psychiatric hospitals. Those people saved my life. What makes me upset about that, and about the guy who made the joke about your artwork, is that you have no idea of what somebody else is carrying. And I think that's such an important part of suicide prevention, is the kindness that we show other people and checking in. And when we feel it, ourselves, me not being suicidal now, you being someone who has lost someone to suicide, it really opens up how then that must feel to people like Riley, because they, if they're thinking, you know, maybe today's the day, or I'm not feeling so great, and there's some ideation going on there, if they're hearing jokes like that, I really can't fathom what that must feel like to them in that moment, for someone to make the comment, oh, they deserve to be locked up, they're crazy, they may as well kill themselves, whatever those disgusting things are that people say. I can't imagine when I was at my lowest what that would have felt like if I had heard somebody say that to me, and whether it would have made my choice happen faster or cemented my beliefs about myself. So I would 100% agree with you, McKenna, that it's not okay. And you were saying about just wanting to normalize these conversations, and it's exactly what you're doing. It's by having this conversation with me, by doing what you're doing with your channel, you are normalizing these conversations. And for the people coming after us, it's going to make it so much more accessible, because they're hearing people doing it first, and they can take even the words, like sometimes you don't have the right words. So to be able to take words that they might have heard you or one of your guests share and be able to share them with somebody else, I think what you guys are doing is going to be one of those things that changes the face of how people talk about this in the future.
Same with you. When I first heard your podcast, I was amazed at the work you're doing. And I said somebody put us together, you know, to see each other and talk to each other. But another thing about Riley, too, is he would do anything for anyone. And he didn't care if they're homeless. I mean, I have seen him take off brand new shoes that he worked really hard for when he was a teenager, and took them off his feet and went and gave them to a homeless guy, and then went to where we were going barefooted because he figured that guy needed him worse than he did. And that's how Riley was his whole entire life. And Riley also was the kind of person that would not live to be rich. He would always fix up a junk car and drive it till it goes bad, and then get another one or whatever. He didn't want the big house. He always wanted to just be in the mountains and be himself and be in nature. And I didn't understand it a lot, but it was him, and that's who he wanted to be. And so there were times he would go work, you know, up in Montana, up at Yellowstone, or down in Las Vegas, or wherever he was going, and we wouldn't see him for months. And then we'd talk to him, but we wouldn't see him. And then he'd come home and get a local job until he got bored, and then he'd go back and do another one. But the kindness in his life was what I tried to do, try to be. And I'll the rest of my life, I'll try to be as funny as him, and it'll never work. So he had a lot going for him.
Riley sounds like somebody who I probably would have been really good friends with. I can see a lot of similarities there in the connection to nature and the natural world. Were there signs that you guys, in hindsight now, can look back and go, oh, maybe I should have picked up on this?
We knew for quite a while that Riley had depression, and I personally took him to a couple of different doctors. And the first doctor said, oh, you'll get over it. You don't need any medicine. Second doctor said, I'm going to put you on something. And Riley took it for about a week, and he didn't see a change, so he decided he wasn't going to take it. And then Riley attempted the first time and wasn't successful. And after that, he got into some good therapy, some good medicine, and we thought that his life had turned around and everything was fine. The only problem is he hid it very, very well.
I don't know how many people know that he had attempted before. But after that, he, through an event of things that I won't go into, didn't have somewhere to live. And he was in the hospital for a while, and he came out and he lived with me, actually. And it's hard not to analyze every single thing that happened from the time he moved into me to the time that he passed away, because I mean, it's just hard not to. I guess there's no good reason as to why, but there definitely were things that I can look back on and be like, was that a sign, or was this something I would have been more concerned about or should have, or what could I have done? But overall, it was really, really hard. And I don't want to say that in a way that makes it sound like I'm complaining about it. But we all were worried about him every single day. And I mean, I think you're worried about all of your kids every day. But knowing that he had attempted, it was hard not to read into everything in certain situations. And when, on the day that he passed, he had messaged someone, and through a chain of events, it had gotten to me. And he had called me and asked me if I was going to be there. And I said, no, I have somewhere else to go after work. I'll be late tonight. And so that was like way earlier in the day. And that wasn't out of line for him to ask me. I mean, he'd be like, what are you doing tonight? Or let's watch a movie, whatever. And I was on my way there, and I don't want to say I wasn't concerned, but I was pretty confident that I was going to go. We were going to go watch a movie. He was probably having a bad day, and we were going to figure it out. And so looking back, it's like, oh, did he ask me if I was going to be there because he knew he was going to do this? Or, again, it wasn't an out of line thing, but there were a lot of things that it's hard not to read into.
The day that it happened is one of my stepson's birthdays, and Riley had called me, and we talked for a half hour or so, and then later on, I called him and said, hey, we're going to go to your favorite pizza place. Do you want to go? And he said, no, I don't feel like it tonight, but let's go tomorrow night. And we had just gone out on Saturday night, and he bought everybody dinner, and that threw up a sign for us after he was gone that why would he do that? But McKenna ended up paying him back.
Yeah, so he bought dinner, but again, he was a nice person, and it's something that he would do. It's hard because there are so many things that you question, like, was that a sign, or was that him being nice, or was that him just talking? And when we went to dinner, we actually talked about this earlier, I paid him back. Like, it wasn't a, hey, pay me back kind of thing, but I was like, I'm just going to Venmo you some money, like, whatever. And he didn't argue it. He wasn't like, oh, I'll just send it back to you real quick. So to me, like, he was planning on keeping that money. He wasn't planning on not being here. And
he was making future Riley decisions. Yeah. And the reason that I asked that is because it is something that the people close to me have brought up so often that they had no idea.
Right.
My partner, Scott, who had come with me to the doctors when I said, I'm not great and I think I need to go to hospital. We left the doctors that day and the doctor said, oh, no, I don't think you do. And he changed my medication, and my partner was a bit cranky about that, but he was like, okay, we'll see. And on the day that I attempted, when Scott left the house, I asked him to get my favourite kind of soft drink. And I listened to him drive down the road, and that's when I made the choice and I left the house. And while he was concerned about my mental health at the time, he was not worried about leaving me alone that day, that thought didn't enter his head. And I would have to say that this is why it is important to check on the people who you think might be okay. It's something that's come up again in my own story, and it sounds like with Riley too, that there aren't always these big glaring signs. They're not people who attempt to take their own life and not always standing on the edge of a massive precipice, like you have the idea of, people standing on the edge of the bridge or whatever,
Right.
whatever metaphor people want to put around it. But a lot of the time that's not what it looks like.
True. Riley had a great job, made more money than I could dream of making. He was working for the government, making military supplies, and he loved that job, and he would work so much, and he wanted to better our country, and that's what he had always wanted, to do that kind of work. And that was another reason why I thought there's no way he's going to leave us, because he loves this job. He loves everything about it, and until he was gone. So, in counseling, I've talked to my counselor about it a lot. And she said every single person will always feel guilty about their loved one dying. And 99.9% of the time it has nothing to do with that person,
In that year that he had lived with me, it was probably the happiest I'd ever seen him. There were so many, it was a hard time at the beginning, but there was so much good that happened in the time that we shared living together, and it really was, I thought things were looking up so much.
I think there was a question I was going to ask, but I think you've answered it, but I'm going to just say it, because what I was going to ask was, did you find yourself searching for answers that simply didn't exist? And I think everything you have talked about there speaks to that exactly. There are answers that just don't exist.
To add to that, after he died, I think I was searching everywhere, because there was no note, there was no anything. And I went nuts, just trying to, partially, I wanted to know, was this a spur of the moment thing, or did he know when he talked to me earlier that day this was his plan? When we went to dinner the night before, did he know that that was probably the last time he would see me? I was like, let's go through bank statements. Let's see what he did that day. Let's see where he went. Let's see everything that had happened. I wanted to know if he was, again, making future plans. Was he buying things to be shipped here, or whatever it was? I wanted answers. And ultimately, none of those answers would have brought me peace. Whether it would have been a split-second decision or something that was planned wouldn't have changed how I felt. And I probably won't ever know.
And we both spent a long time trying to figure that out.
Mm.
Notes, phone calls, phone records, purchases, everything, and there was nothing.
I often hear people, when they're talking about suicide, refer to it as selfish. And it's something that I feel very uncomfortable with, and this is the reason that I'm asking it, because this is the narrative that I want to change. Is there any aspect of your son and your brother that you felt was selfish?
Not even a little bit.
Yeah, zero.
I don't want to say I wish someone would say that to me, but sometimes I don't want to know who I would turn into if someone said that straight to my face. I had talked to someone who is close to our family, that I know, and she had lost her brother and said that several people said that to her. And I would not be very nice. And as I'm sitting here saying how important it is to be nice, but I think it's such a misconception that needs to be changed because, like I said, there wasn't even a little part of him that was selfish, or I think did it for selfish reasons.
We recently did an episode where a father of a hugely popular basketball star in Utah, his daughter committed suicide, and he said that me and McKenna are doing God's work by spreading this word, but he also said, would we be doing this podcast, or would we be talking to you right now if Riley wouldn't have lost his life? And the answer is no, we wouldn't be. But if I had a choice between having Riley back or doing this podcast, I'd take Riley back every single time. But hopefully we can help others.
I think you're already doing that.
Yeah, thank you. We get letters, notes, emails, texts that said, I'm staying here because of this. And we're only 16 or 17 episodes in, and we've already been getting these letters that the topic we talked about in a certain week affected people that I never even heard of, like the personality disorders and stuff. And the person said, oh my gosh, I can keep going because I see what this person did, So we are helping people, but I just wish that I could have helped the person that I love most.
Yeah, I can understand that. At what point did you decide that Riley's story needed to become something bigger than your grief and your feelings and your questions? Where along that journey did you go, okay, this is what we're going to do?
So the day after Riley killed himself, we got together as a family, my first wife, my current wife, and all the children. And we decided that we were going to say that he committed suicide because we are, I'm going to swear, but we're sick and damn tired of people dying when they don't need to. And it's not a United States thing, and it's not an Australian thing, or it's not a Great Britain thing. It is a worldwide epidemic, and it needs to stop. And this is why we're doing it. This is why you're doing it. We have got to stop this. And, like I said, if we can help one person, that's fine. We're helping more. And hopefully it's just a ripple effect where more people will have the courage to come on your show, my show, McKenna's show, different shows, and tell their stories so they can help other people.
When we had his celebration of life, there were so many people that we spoke with who we had found related to what we were going through. And that, I always say, is such a bittersweet thing because while it did help us feel less alone, it is so devastating to know that this unbearable grief is something that other people could relate to. And I think for me, that was a really big moment of I want to do something to help other people. I've always felt like I want to find a way to help other people, and I never knew what way it would be or what I would do or how I would even go about it. But we started talking, and I don't think it was just a one day, here's what it is, but as we kept talking and going through ideas and just what we could do to not only honor him, but also help other people.
Yeah, I think it was about 6 months after he died, me and Kenna were here and we were just talking, and I said, it just keeps coming to me that we should do a podcast. And she said, hey, that sounds fun. And she said, what do you want it to be about? And I said, well, let's do it in memory of Riley and let's help other people. And we figured, oh yeah, 2 cell phones and we'll be ready, Oh, did we learn that it takes a lot more? So we ended up starting, and we thought we were going to start January 1st. And by the time we got all of our equipment and learned it and trial and error and everything else, but we got going, but it's going now very well. And we're figuring out the editing, we're figuring out everything, but we've learned so much from it, and we're better people because of it.
Has hearing other people's stories helped with your own healing?
I think so. Like I said, it is so hard because I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy.
It has helped me so much. When I talk to my counselor and I'll tell her what I was editing that week or what story we talked about, she's like, you seem so much better now. And I said, everything's great. And then I went to this one episode recently that changed my life for the rest of my life. And this is where you may say I'm cuckoo and take it out. But there was a girl that had borderline personality disorder. And I had known her since she was a teenager, and I didn't know this happened to her. And she had a really, really tough life. Well, her and Riley were very good friends since second grade. And we videoed it and everything was fine. But when I went to edit it, I just could not edit it. I would bawl and I would cry and I would think this poor girl. And I was so devastated for her, but so happy for her how it ended up. And then all of a sudden I would get this message that I knew was Riley that said, you need to text this certain person and apologize to them for something you did 20, 25 years ago. And I'm thinking, that's so weird. So I get on my phone and I do it. And I say, okay, that's weird. So I get typing again and I'm starting editing. I'm only like 6 minutes into the hour and a half video. And I hear him again and he's like, you need to go check on your wife. You know, my wife's Nikki. And Nikki's a school teacher and she's off for a couple weeks this summer and she was in doing something. I don't know. She's working on another degree. And I said, oh, okay, I will. And I just kept typing, and kept editing. And I get to like minute 8 and he's like, no, you don't understand. You need to go check on Nikki. So I go to check on her and our bedroom door is closed and our bedroom door is never closed. And I thought, that's really weird. She must be really tired. So I went back and I'm working. And then 20 minutes later, so I hear him say, you need to go check on Nikki. Well, I have never seen Nikki cry. I've seen a tear roll down her eye, like at Riley's funeral. That's it. Never have I seen her cry. And I open up that door and she's laying on her bed and she is bawling, like crying harder than I've ever seen anyone cry. And I had been crying that whole day over having these feelings from Riley. And I just fell apart and I was just bawling with her and we hugged for like 5 minutes straight. Didn't say a word to each other and just hugged and hugged and hugged. Finally, after about 5 minutes, I backed up and she backed up and we looked at each other and we both said the exact same time, Riley. And he was there and he knew that we both needed him there that day. And there were many other things that happened that day, but I'm going to give you the final one is Riley has a way of speaking to people sometimes when they didn't want to hear it. He'll tell you the truth. If you're being a jerk, he's going to tell you. And sometimes I'm not the most calm person, or I'll say something that he didn't think was kind to my wife. So he would apologize to her for me, which he should have never had to do. But I need to go to bed like by 8 o'clock. So I get up really, really early to go to bed. And I'm getting ready to go to bed. And I said, no, I need to go back and keep editing for just a little bit longer. And I'm editing, and I'm thinking, what he just said to me, I cannot do. So I'm not even going to mention it. And then I went and showered and I get ready for bed and brush my teeth. And I get to bed and I look at the clock and it's like 10:45. And I text McKenna and I said, McKenna, are you still up? She said, yeah. So I called her and I said, Riley told me that you should ask your mom to be on the show. And me and Riley's mom don't talk. And in fact, we have each other blocked on everything. And she's like, what? And then I told her and she's like, okay, we'll talk about this tomorrow. Get some sleep. And so the next day she was at work and she wasn't answering me back. So I thought, okay, I'm going to text my oldest son. And I said, Riley told me that I should have his mom on the show. And he wrote back, what the F? So I'm like, it was Riley. And so I had McKenna ask, and she's going to be on the show. But that next day, he also asked me to ask Jeremy, my oldest son, to be on the show. And he said, thank you, because for the last 3 or 4 days, I've really been thinking that I should be on the show, but I don't know how to go about asking you. So just because somebody's gone doesn't mean that they're not going to be with you. For my whole life, I always wanted my mom to come back and talk to me, or my dad to come back to me, or whoever. I'd always say, if you die, come back and see me. And none of them ever did. But when I was having one of the hardest days since his death, and I'm trying to edit this about a friend of his story and what she went through in school and what she went through in relationships and everything else, it was him at that time, knowing I was having such a hard time, but he knew then that I was okay for him to come back. And that's why he came back then instead of when I wanted him to come back. And it makes so much sense to me now. But a couple of weeks ago, I wanted to go to my counselor and call her up and say, can we have an emergency meeting? Because something's really wrong here. And I said, you're going to think I'm crazy when I tell you this story. And then after, she said, no, I think that's the most sane thing you have ever said. So anyway, but it's crazy. So when you least expect it, loved ones will come back and talk to you when you need it.
You know what? I don't think that's crazy at all. You said at the start, you might think this is a bit,
Thank you.
No, I 100% agree with everything that you just said.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
And it doesn't surprise me in everything that I've learnt about people who take their own lives. They are people generally who feel deeply, who often struggle with the complexity of how the world works. They see things in a different way. I certainly do. Like when I look at the world, my heart hurts for the things that are going wrong. And you're talking about Riley taking his shoes off and giving them to a homeless guy. I was walking through the park last week in Armadale, and there was a lady sitting outside of the toilets. And I just got cash out of the ATM to pay my daughter back because I took $20 out of her wallet to leave a donation at a cultural centre that I went to. And so I took some of that cash and I just handed it to the lady that was outside of the toilets. And this is going to sound horrible, but that there's a stigma attached to homelessness, especially in our country, where people say, oh, if you give them money, they're just going to spend it on drugs or whatever. I didn't care. I did not care what this lady, if she needed that more than a meal, well, then that's fine. I think losing somebody to suicide, quite often they can be the people who help us see things differently or inspire us in different ways. And I think that's why I struggle with the negative stigma that's around it. And I'm just so grateful for you guys doing what you do. I think it's very important for those of us who have lived experience, and it doesn't matter on what side, to continue to talk about this because it's our story. And if we can share that chapter with somebody else, it might change theirs.
Yeah.
The last question I want to ask you guys is, if Riley could see what has grown from his story through the conversations that you guys are having, what do you think he'd think about this?
Riley was someone who didn't want to be the center of attention. He didn't want things revolving around him. And I think he would give me such a hard time and say, why are you making this about me? Because Riley had so much to his life, and I don't want him to be remembered for the way he passed away. But that is such a big thing, and that's why we're talking about it. But I think if he were here, he would hate that so much attention has been brought to him. And not because he doesn't like it, because I know that he would be so proud of what we are doing. And with such a kind heart that he had, I think he would be honored to know that other people were benefiting. And I think he'd be really proud of us and glad at what we're doing.
I think he's up there smiling down at us, and he's proud of us, and he wants us to keep it up, and he wants other people to do the same. We need to talk about suicide. We need to talk about homelessness. We need to talk about mental health. We need to talk more about men's mental health. We need to talk about why people are homeless, not just because they're homeless. We need to try to help them. We need to try to make the world better, because sometimes our governments are not making it better. And sometimes the people that make the decisions are keeping the money and it's not flowing down. And we have got to start communities that one person at a time can start spreading the news. And your podcast does it. And our podcast is trying to do it. And we need a lot more to do it. And we need a lot more help by getting the word out and helping each other.
Mm.
And we all need to stay here. Live as long as you can. I want to be this grumpy old guy. And then I told my wife that the other day, and she said, "You're already that grumpy old guy." And I said, "No, a much grumpier old guy." So anyway,
Kindness goes a long way.
It really does. There is an amazing man that I interviewed last year now. His name is Stuart O'Neill, and he said, "We focus on the number of deaths by suicide, and what we need to focus on is the number of attempts. Because if we can reduce the number of attempts, we reduce the number of deaths." And the fact that there are so many people in my country and your country and countries all over the world who are thinking that maybe this world would be better off without me in it. If we can change that, that's how we change that final number. The number that we lose people's brothers and sons and daughters, and, you know, it changes the world for everybody.
Yeah. And I'm a person that's spoke up for many, many years on men's health. And I also, since this podcast has came out, McKenna and her friend Carly interviewed me about my childhood sexual abuse, interviewed me about my dyslexia, about I have a head tremor, all of these things that most people would be afraid to share, but I'm sharing them because I want to keep people alive. And so thank you for this opportunity.
I'm so grateful that you guys agreed to come and talk to me, because the thing that I have learnt is the only thing that really invites people into vulnerability is sharing your own. And Doug, I have listened to your story and how you shared that, and the level of vulnerability that you guys share with your guests during every episode. You are demonstrating to the rest of the world how we do this, and I want to say thank you to you guys.
We want to say thank you to you, and thank you so much for letting us on.
I really do appreciate your time and just allowing us to tell our story, and you're incredible.
Thank you, guys. Now, I would love for my listeners to come over and have a listen to some of the stuff that we've talked about today. So where can they find you?
The best way probably is just go to our webpage, which is www.thisismychapter.com. And I'll give you a link to every one of our podcasts. And all of our podcasts are on YouTube. They're all videoed. Best thing you can do to not only our channel, but to Shannon's channel, is to like, subscribe, and comment, because that is how other people see us. If you don't like and comment and subscribe, we don't grow and people don't see us. And that's how we grow.
What about socials, guys? Because that's another thing.
Yeah.
If you guys can help us grow on our social media, then other people find us there, and then they go and listen to our content. So what platforms are you guys on?
So right now we have Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. all of which are also linked on our website, thisismychapter.com. If you go there, you can find links to all of them.
And we're doing it with 2 people. It's just me and her. And we both
Two
work full.
people doing our best.
We both work full time. We both have lives. I have 10 kids. It's that's why my wife says she never sees me. But yeah, just join. Let us know you like it. And if one of you people come on and they say, man, I have a story for him, have them message us and let's get them on.
Doug, I have a list as long as my arm of people who I would like to speak to you. So I will share some of those names and contact details for you.
Please do. I told you this. If I ever get to Australia, no matter where it is in Australia, I'm going to come find you and give the biggest hug you've ever had, because I think your story is one of the most incredible, and I appreciate that we met each other.
Yeah, I really do too. And I don't think that was by accident. So I'm excited to see where this goes next for you guys. I'm rooting for you from across the ocean. I feel like there are far more conversations to come, and I'm really looking forward to that hug. I would really love for you to head over to YouTube, find This Is My Chapter, and hit subscribe for 2 reasons. Firstly, to support McKenna and Doug in their work, but most importantly, to keep in your toolbox for the next time there is a hard conversation that comes your way, or there is a friend or family member who might not be okay. If you don't feel like you have the words, these guys do. Have it there to send to that person that you're concerned about, who might need to hear from someone who really gets it. Doug and McKenna, thank you for sharing Riley with us. Thank you for being here and allowing us to know a little of the young man who sits at the heart of your work. As I sat with this conversation, I found myself thinking about chapters. Not the chapters we choose, the ones we would have torn out if we could. The ones that arrive without permission and divide our lives into a before and an after. For Doug and McKenna, the loss of Riley was one of those chapters, the kind of chapter that changes everything. And yet, listening to them today, I was reminded that while we don't get to choose every chapter in our story, we do get to choose what we do with the pages that follow. Because what struck me most about this conversation isn't just the tragedy of losing Riley, it's the courage. It's the courage to keep speaking his name, the courage to revisit their own unimaginable pain so that somebody else might feel seen in their own, and the courage to take a wound that will never fully heal and use it to create connection, understanding, and hope for others. So often we talk about purpose as though it's something we find, but sometimes purpose is something we build. Sometimes it emerges from the very places we never wanted to visit. What Doug and McKenna are creating through This Is My Chapter feels like an act of love, a refusal to let silence have the final word, a decision that, if this chapter could not be changed, then perhaps it could be used to help write a different ending for somebody else. And maybe that's one of the most powerful things human beings can do, to take pain and transform it into purpose, to take heartbreak and turn it into connection, to take loss and somehow create something that continues to give. Thank you for reminding us that even in our darkest chapters, there remains the possibility of meaning, of purpose, and of hope.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode. If These Trees Could Talk and What Would They Say are productions of Bellevue Studio. Our host is Shannon Walters, executive and audio production by Megan Anderson, with socials and marketing managed by Mia Oberdorf. We always appreciate hearing your thoughts, so if you would like to support the show, you can rate, review and subscribe. To stay up to date between episodes, you can also find us on Instagram, Facebook and TikTok. For more information on this episode, or to connect with our guests, you'll find everything you need to know in the show notes at ifthesetreescouldtalk.com.au. We're grateful to have you with us, and we look forward to sharing what comes next. Thanks for being here.